I want to start this story with a truth I learned very late in life. Not every heartbreak arrives loudly. Not every ending comes with shouting or breaking or dramatic scenes. Some endings arrive in a whisper, in a quiet pause, in a moment you almost ignore. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. Now, let's jump back into the story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. My story begins with that kind of silence. For years, I believed that love was something strong, something steady, something predictable. I believed that once you built a life with someone, you could trust that life to stay the same. But I was wrong. Life changes people quietly, and sometimes love fades in ways you don't notice until the distance becomes too wide to cross. I lived with my wife, Elena, for 8 years. And if someone had asked me during the early years whether I believed our marriage would ever fall apart, I would have smiled and said, no, never. Because in the beginning, she felt like home. She felt like a warm place I could rest my heart, and I thought she felt the same. We were gentle with each other. We spoke softly. We laughed easily. We held hands on walks. We shared small routines, morning tea, late night talks, quiet dinners, the kind of routines that make you believe the world is steady. But life has a way of shifting without warning, sometimes slowly, sometimes so quietly that you don't hear the difference until the silence grows heavy. I noticed it first in the way she smiled. Her smile became smaller, shorter, like she was trying to convince herself that everything was fine. Then it showed in her eyes. She looked distracted, as if her mind was always somewhere else. Not far, just not here. At dinner, she would stare at her plate for seconds longer than usual. Sometimes she would forget what I had just said. Sometimes she would nod to words she hadn't really heard. And sometimes she looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't. I brushed these moments aside. I told myself she was tired, stressed, overwhelmed. I said the same comforting phrases we all tell ourselves when we don't want to face the truth. It's just work. It's just a phase. She needs some rest. Things will get better. But things didn't get better. And deep down in the quiet places of my heart, I felt something shifting. There was one night I cannot forget, a simple night, a peaceful night, but everything felt different. We were sitting on opposite sides of the couch. No argument, no tension, just a calm room and two people who felt strangely far apart. I looked at her. She looked tired, even though the day had been easy. She kept rubbing her hands together like she was cold or anxious. Her breathing was steady, but her eyes told a different story. In that moment, I realized something had changed, not suddenly, not sharply, but quietly over time, like a soft erosion that had been happening without my notice. I wanted to ask her what was wrong. I wanted to say, talk to me, please. But fear held me still, fear of the truth, fear of hurting her, fear of hearing something I wasn't ready to hear. So instead, I did what many people do when they are scared of losing someone. I stayed silent, and she stayed silent, and the distance between us grew a little more that night. When I went to bed, she stayed on the couch for a while. When she finally came to the bedroom, I pretended to be asleep, and she pretended I was asleep. And that small moment, that tiny silence, felt heavier than any argument we ever had. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of the truth. The truth that would eventually reveal itself. The truth that would break something inside me, but would also teach me something I never understood before. This is not a story about anger. This is not a story about blame. This is a story about how love drifts, how hearts change, and how two people can still hurt each other quietly, even when they never meant to. This is my story, and I am ready to tell it. I want to take you back to the beginning, back to the time when everything felt steady. Back to the moments that made me believe our love was safe, untouched, unbreakable. My name is Daniel, and for most of my life, I believed relationships were built on simple things: kindness, patience, small gestures, shared routines. I never imagined that something quiet and gentle could still break. But now, looking back, I understand that even the strongest homes can have unseen cracks. I met Elena when I was 27. At that time, I wasn't looking for anything serious. I was focused on work, trying to build a stable career, not thinking much about settling down. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. We met at a friend's gathering, just a small dinner party. The moment I saw her, something inside me softened. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was sitting quietly near the window, holding a warm cup of tea with both hands, as if she liked the feeling of the heat more than the drink itself. I walked over with no expectations, no hidden purpose, just curiosity. Is the tea good? I asked. She looked up slowly, like she needed a second to come back from her thoughts. Then she smiled, a calm, gentle smile that didn't rush. It's warm, she said softly. Sometimes that's all I want. It was such a simple answer, but it stayed with me because it told me something about her. She appreciated little things. We talked for hours that night about work, about travel, about the small dreams people forget to talk about. She told me she loved collecting memories more than objects. She loved simple routines, morning walks, soft music, quiet corners. She loved the kind of life that didn't need to be loud to feel meaningful. I wasn't used to someone like her. Most of my past relationships had been lively, noisy, full of intense emotions. Elena was different. With her, everything felt calm, like standing beside a lake where the water barely moves. And I liked that, I needed that, even if I didn't know it then. We began meeting more often at cafes, parks, bookstores, not because we planned to, but because being around her felt natural. She listened when I spoke, truly listened. Her eyes stayed on me, her attention didn't wander, and I realized how rare that was, someone being fully present. After a year of quiet, steady love, we married. Our home was small, but it felt full, not full of objects, but full of warmth. We created routines without even trying. Morning tea on the balcony, evening walks around the neighborhood, Sunday laundry with music playing softly in the background, small things that made our lives feel connected. People think love needs grand gestures, but our love lived in the quiet corners, in the way she folded my shirts, in the way I brought her snacks at midnight, in the way we shared silence without feeling awkward. We dreamed about the future, maybe a child someday, maybe a bigger house someday. Maybe a small garden with flowers she wanted to care for, but we never rushed. We believed we had time. In our third year of marriage, she changed jobs. It was a good opportunity. Better salary, more responsibilities, more pressure. I supported her. I wanted her to grow. She had always put others first. It felt good to see her finally think about her own ambitions. But with the new job came long hours, late nights, endless deadlines, messages from her boss at all times, sudden meetings. Still, we tried to hold on to our little routines. Some days we succeeded, some days we didn't, but I didn't think too much of it. Life gets busy, everyone goes through it. I believed the phase would pass. Looking back, I can see the early signs so clearly, but at that time I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. One evening, near the end of her first year at the new job, she came home later than usual. Her shoulders looked tense, her eyes were tired. She placed her bag down quietly and sat on the couch without saying anything. I asked, "Long day?" She nodded. "Very long." I sat beside her. I didn't touch her. Something about her body language felt closed, like she needed space. After a minute, she said softly, "I'm sorry, I just need a moment." It didn't hurt to hear those words. I understood. We all have overwhelming days, but that became a pattern, a small one, a quiet one, but still a pattern. She needed a moment more often. Then she needed time to herself. Then she needed space to think. She began spending more evenings in the guest room, not because we had fought, not because anything had happened, but because she said the quiet helped her clear her head. I didn't argue. I didn't want to make her feel trapped. I wanted to be supportive. But a part of me wondered, why couldn't she rest near me? Why couldn't she find quiet in our shared space anymore? Why did she need distance from the person she once called home? I pushed those questions aside. Sometimes love makes you blind in gentle ways. You ignore your own feelings so you don't burden the person you love. She stopped telling me about her day, stopped sharing stories about her coworkers, stopped laughing at small things like she used to. Some nights she came home smiling at her phone. But when I walked into the room, she would lock the screen quickly, not in a suspicious way, just in a way that made something deep inside me drop slightly. I remember asking once, "Everything okay?" She looked up, surprised. "Yes, why?" "No reason," I said, but inside there was a reason, a tiny one, a quiet one, a reason I didn't want to say out loud. She became forgetful too. She forgot where she placed her keys, forgot conversations we had, forgot plans we made, nothing serious but different enough to notice. Her hugs changed as well. They were shorter, lighter, as if she was hugging out of habit, not emotion. And still I stayed quiet. I kept hoping things would go back to how they were. I kept believing love was enough to fix invisible cracks. People often ask, "Why didn't you say something? Why didn't I ask her directly? Why didn't I tell her I felt her drifting away? The truth is simple. I was afraid of the answer, afraid of making her feel pressured, afraid of hearing something I wasn't ready for. So I convinced myself that silence was kinder, that giving her space was supportive. That love meant patience, but patience without communication becomes distance, and distance is where misunderstandings grow. There was one night that told me everything, even if I chose to ignore it at the time. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Her hands were resting loosely on her knees. She looked exhausted, but not physically. Emotionally, I sat beside her. "Are you okay?" I asked. She hesitated long enough for me to notice. Then she said, "I think I'm just overwhelmed. I need to figure some things out." I nodded slowly. "Do you want to talk?" She shook her head gently. "Not yet." Her voice was soft, but the softness hurt more than anger would have. I wanted to reach out and hold her, but I didn't. Something stopped me, something invisible but real. That night she fell asleep facing the opposite direction, and I stared at the ceiling, wondering what had changed and why I couldn't find the courage to face it. It wasn't broken, not yet. But it didn't feel the same. There were more silences, more pauses, more moments where her eyes looked away instead of toward me. We still said, "I love you," but the words felt lighter, almost like they were floating without resting anywhere. She wasn't unkind, she wasn't cold, she wasn't angry, she was just distant. And that kind of distance is the hardest to understand. Because you can feel it, you can sense it, you can see it, but you cannot hold it in your hands and fix it. By our 7th year of marriage, we were living more like two quiet roommates than two people in love. We still shared a roof. We still shared meals. We still shared routines. But we didn't share our hearts anymore. I kept telling myself the distance was temporary. That stress would fade. That life would settle. But deep down, I already felt the truth. I just wasn't ready to face it. Because facing it meant accepting that something had shifted quietly. And accepting it meant opening the door to pain I wasn't prepared for. Little did I know, the real truth, the one that would break me, was already on its way, and it was much closer than I realized. If I had to describe the beginning of the real distance between us, I would say it started quietly, not in a moment of anger, not in a fight, but in small, slow shifts, moments that passed so silently that I didn't see the truth behind them. Rising conflict doesn't always mean arguments. Sometimes it means two hearts drifting while pretending everything is the same. That is how our story moved toward the breaking point. It began with something small, a weekend plan. We used to spend our weekends together without even thinking about it. Breakfast at the same cafe, a short walk afterward, maybe a movie in the evening, sometimes grocery shopping or talking about future plans. It was routine, yes, but a warm one. Then one Friday afternoon, she came home and said softly, "I'm going out tomorrow." I looked up, surprised. "Oh, with who?" "A friend," she said. She didn't mention a name. She didn't explain further, but I didn't press her. "Okay," I said gently. "Do you want me to pick you up later?" She shook her head almost quickly. "No, it's fine. I won't be late anyway." There was something in her tone, not rude, not distant, but guarded. Like she wanted to make sure the conversation ended quickly. That night she went to bed early, and I stayed awake longer than usual, staring at the empty space beside me, wondering when our simple life became so unfamiliar. The next morning she left before I woke up. I found a note on the kitchen counter. "I'll be back by evening. Don't wait." Her handwriting looked rushed, not like her usual neat style. Throughout the day, my phone stayed silent. No updates, no messages, no check-ins. She never used to be like that. She always sent small updates, short messages, little signs that she was thinking of me. By evening, I grew restless, not suspicious, just uneasy. Around 6 p.m., my phone chimed. A short message: "Still out, will be late." Something inside me tightened gently, not enough to hurt, but enough to worry. At 10 p.m., the door finally opened. I stood up from the couch, relieved but uncertain. "You're home," I said softly. She smiled faintly. "Yes, sorry it got late." Her eyes looked tired, but not in a physical way, more like she had been thinking too much. "Did you have fun?" I asked. She nodded. "It was good." After that, she walked into the bedroom. I stayed behind, staring at the closed door, feeling a strange emptiness. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't anger, it was distance. A quiet distance that felt heavier than any argument. The following week felt different. She was around, but not present. Her responses were limited to, okay. "Maybe tomorrow. I'm tired. Let's talk later." She smiled less. Her eyes looked somewhere else when I spoke. Sometimes I caught her staring at nothing, lost in thought, and every night the gap in the bed between us felt wider. She slept with her back toward me, curled up slightly like she was protecting something inside her. I thought of reaching out, I really did. But every time I lifted my hand, I froze, afraid she would move away, afraid I would make things worse. Afraid the truth I sensed was real. One night I decided to try something. I cooked her favorite meal, the one she used to love, the one we made on our first anniversary. It took time, effort, patience, but I didn't mind. I wanted to remind her of us, of the warmth we used to share, of the softness we once lived in. When she came home, she paused at the doorway. I could see surprise in her eyes. "You cooked," she said gently. I smiled. "I wanted to. It's been a while." She nodded softly. There was something like guilt in her expression, just a flicker, a brief shadow. We sat at the table. I waited for her to take the first bite, but she barely touched her plate. "It's good," she said quietly. "I'm just not very hungry." I tried to hide the sinking feeling inside me. "Are you okay?" She hesitated. Her fork paused in the air. She looked down at her plate. "I'm just tired," she whispered. We ate mostly in silence. I kept searching her face for something, a clue, an emotion, a sign, but she kept her eyes lowered, focused on her food. When dinner ended, she stood up quickly. "Thank you for cooking," she said. Her voice was soft, polite, distant. Then she disappeared into the guest room, and the kitchen felt too quiet. A few days later, I noticed something else. Her phone, usually silent, started lighting up more often. Late at night, early in the morning, sometimes during dinner, she always placed it face down. Always before, she never cared if her screen was visible. She never hid messages. She never turned away from me to check her notifications. But now she did. One evening, we were watching a show together, or rather, I was watching. She was sitting beside me, scrolling her phone quietly. Her screen lit up again. She looked down, her expression shifting subtly, not happiness, not fear, just something. She read the message quickly, then locked her phone as if she didn't want me to see. "Everything okay?" I asked softly. She nodded too quickly. "Yes, it's just work." But I could hear a faint tremble in her voice, just enough to make my heart tight. I didn't question her. I didn't want to sound controlling. I didn't want to invade her privacy. But a quiet ache settled inside me, and it stayed. Physical affection had always been a gentle part of our relationship. Small touches, hand on hand, a shoulder leaning against mine, a soft hug before bed. Nothing dramatic, just quiet, simple connection. But gradually she stopped. She didn't reach for my hand. She didn't hug me first. When I touched her shoulder, she stiffened slightly, not in anger, but in discomfort. Like she wasn't used to my touch anymore, like it didn't feel natural for her, like she was somewhere else, emotionally far, far away. One night I leaned forward to kiss her cheek. She pulled back gently, almost without thinking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm just tired." But the apology hurt even more than the distance, because apologies don't come unless someone knows they are pulling away. And she knew. I told myself, tomorrow I will ask, tomorrow I will speak up, tomorrow I will tell her I feel her drifting away. But tomorrow kept moving, and so did she. There were moments when she looked like she wanted to talk. Her eyes lingered on me longer than usual. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something important. But then she closed herself again. I watched her silence. I felt her quiet walls. I sensed the truth even though she hadn't said it. Love can still hurt even without words. One Tuesday, evening turned into night and she didn't come home. I waited, at first calmly, then with worry, then with fear. I called once. She didn't pick up. I called again. Still no answer. Around midnight, the door finally opened. She stepped inside quietly, too quietly. Her hair looked slightly messy. Her eyes were swollen like she had been crying or in deep thought. Her cheeks looked pale. Her hands were trembling slightly as she placed her bag down. "Where were you?" I asked gently, not angrily, just worried. She hesitated long enough to tell me everything without saying a word. "I needed some time," she whispered. "Time alone." "Are you okay?" She looked away. Her silence answered for her. I pressed a little, but carefully. "Is something going on?" Her eyes met mine, and I saw sadness in them. "Real sadness? I don't know," she said again. "I'm trying to understand myself." Those words stayed with me, trying to understand herself. It felt like she was slipping away from the life we built and into a place I couldn't follow. A few days after that night, I woke up early. She wasn't beside me. I walked into the living room. She was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. Her expression was soft, almost tender, a kind of look she hadn't shown me in months. She didn't hear me at first. I took a step forward quietly. Her screen lit up again, a message, a name I didn't recognize. Her eyes softened more, an expression I had been longing for, but not for me, not anymore. And in that moment, I felt something inside me break gently, not in anger, not in betrayal, but in sadness. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't furious. I was hurt, deeply, quietly, silently hurt. Before she could notice me, I stepped back into the hallway. I didn't want her to feel guilty. I didn't want to accuse her. I wanted to understand, but understanding hurts too. Over the next week, she became even quieter. Her smiles disappeared almost completely. Her hugs stopped entirely. She avoided eye contact. Her responses became shorter. I kept trying to hold on, trying to stay calm, trying to give her space. But space, when it grows too much, becomes emptiness. And emptiness is what filled our home. Something had shifted, something real, something deep, and she was hiding it with silence. The conflict between us was not loud, it was not dramatic, it lived in the pauses, in the unsaid words, in the soft sighs late at night, in the distance between our bodies on the bed, in the way she flinched at my touch without meaning to. Love was still there, but so was something else, something quiet, something breaking. And I was standing in the middle, trying to hold together something she no longer had the strength or desire to hold with me. This was the rising conflict. This was the quiet storm. This was the beginning of the truth that was about to unfold. And even though I felt it coming, I still wasn't ready for what I would learn next. I remember one evening when something small happened, but it stayed with me for a long time. We were getting ready for dinner, and I asked her what she felt like eating. It was a normal question, something we had asked each other 1,000 times. But this time she didn't answer right away. She stood near the kitchen counter, staring at a glass of water as if it held something she was trying very hard to understand. After a long pause, she said softly, "Anything is fine." Her voice didn't sound annoyed or impatient. It simply sounded distant, like she wasn't really present, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. I made dinner anyway. I tried talking about random things, a small story from work, a memory from our early married days, even a silly joke, but every attempt felt like throwing words into an empty room. She nodded a few times. She smiled once, but it was small, almost like she felt obligated to respond. At that dinner table, the silence between us didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt heavy. It felt like something unsaid was sitting between us, growing larger with every passing day. Another moment came when I tried to reach for her hand while we were watching a movie. I didn't think much of it. It was a simple gesture, something we always used to do without thinking. But when my fingers touched hers, she gently pulled her hand away, not abruptly, not harshly, just quietly. She pretended she needed to adjust the blanket on her legs, but I knew, I felt it. Her hands used to be warm in mine. Now they felt like they were slipping away. That night after the movie ended, she went to bed early. I stayed on the couch for a long time, staring at the dim light from the TV screen, wondering what I was doing wrong. Was I not paying enough attention? Was I working too much? Was she unhappy with the life we built? Or was she unhappy with me? These questions kept echoing in my head again and again without any answers. The next weekend, I suggested we go for a long drive, just the two of us. We used to love long drives, playing soft music, talking about random things, stopping at roadside cafes. Those drives used to feel like little escapes from the world. But this time she said she wasn't in the mood. Her tone wasn't rude, but it was final. It felt like a closed door. I tried again the next day. "Maybe we can go for a walk in the evening?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she shook her head, saying maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow came and she said the same thing again. I could feel her slipping into a world where I was not being invited. I could feel myself standing at the edge of something I didn't understand. One afternoon, I came home earlier than usual. She didn't expect me. When I walked into the living room, she quickly locked her phone and placed it face down. It was a small action, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. She smiled at me, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was that same distant expression I had been seeing for months. I didn't ask whose messages she was reading. I didn't ask what she was hiding, but something inside me softened in a painful way. A small voice whispered, "She is slowly drifting somewhere you cannot follow." In the days that followed, her behavior became more unpredictable. Sometimes she was unusually quiet, other times she was overly cheerful in a way that felt forced, and sometimes she avoided conversations completely, saying she was tired or overwhelmed. She spent more time on her phone. Her screen brightness was always turned low. Her notifications were always on silent. And even though I tried to tell myself that I trusted her, a strange heaviness grew inside me. Not jealousy, not suspicion, just fear, a quiet fear of losing someone without knowing why. One night she went to shower and left her phone on the bed. It lit up with a message. The screen didn't show the full conversation, only a name, a man's name I didn't recognize. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't open anything, I didn't cross that line, but something changed in me right then. A knot tightened in my chest. A quiet ache settled in my heart like I knew something painful was coming. When she came out of the shower and saw the phone in my line of sight, she paused. Her eyes dropped to the floor for a second too long, then she forced a gentle smile. "Did you call someone?" she asked, even though she already knew I hadn't. "No," I said quietly. She nodded, but her shoulders tensed. She grabbed the phone quickly and walked away. That moment stayed with me, not because of the message, not because of the name, but because of the fear I saw in her eyes. Fear doesn't appear unless there is something to hide. In the coming weeks, the distance between us became almost visible. It felt like she lived in the same house, but in a different emotional space, a space where I wasn't welcome. She spent more evenings in the bedroom with the door slightly closed. She stayed up late more often. She took her phone with her everywhere, even places she never used to. Sometimes she would look at me with a softness that felt almost like guilt. I didn't know why, but I felt it. I began to sleep later than usual, hoping that maybe she would sit with me for a while, but she rarely did. There was one night I'll never forget. She sat beside me briefly and said, "Do you ever feel like you're losing yourself?" Her voice was soft, almost trembling. I wanted to tell her she wasn't losing herself. I wanted to tell her she wasn't alone. I wanted to tell her we could talk, fix things, understand each other. But before I could answer, she stood up and walked away. That unanswered question stayed in my heart like a quiet storm. Something was breaking, and neither of us wanted to admit it. I remember the exact day when everything quietly shifted into a place I could no longer ignore. It wasn't dramatic and it wasn't loud. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind that should have felt peaceful, but instead carried a weight I couldn't understand. It was a Sunday, the kind of day we used to spend together, cleaning the house, cooking a simple meal, maybe watching a movie in the evening. But this Sunday felt different from the moment it began. Elena woke up earlier than usual. She moved around the room softly, almost too softly, as if she did not want to disturb me. She didn't look at me when I opened my eyes. Instead, she continued getting ready, her face calm but distant, her movements slow and controlled. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound relaxed. She turned slightly, smiled lightly, and said, "Morning." A simple word, but something in her tone felt hollow, like she was saying it only because she had to, not because she felt it. She left the room quickly after that. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering why the room suddenly felt colder. A little later, I walked to the kitchen to make tea, and that's when I saw her phone on the dining table, vibrating once, then twice. The same name appeared on the screen, the same name I had seen weeks before. A man I didn't know. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't even move closer. But the moment froze something inside me. She walked into the kitchen a few seconds later and saw me standing there. Her eyes darted immediately to the phone. She picked it up quickly, almost too quickly, and pressed the power button to turn the screen black. "You're up early," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah," I whispered. She stood there, the phone in her hand, her thumb resting on the edge as if protecting something fragile, and then without any explanation, she said, "I'm going out for a bit." Where? It slipped out of me before I could control the question. She hesitated, just for a breath, but that single breath said everything. "I'm meeting a friend." Her words were simple, but the silence after them felt heavy. "Which friend?" I asked softly. She looked at me. Her expression shifted for just a second, like she was searching for the right answer but didn't know which one would hurt less. "Just a friend," she repeated quietly. I nodded. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to hold on to the comfort of the past where she never hid anything from me. But that time had already slipped away. She left the house soon after. She didn't dress up more than usual, but she chose a fragrance she hadn't worn in months, a soft floral scent that she used to wear on our early dates back when everything felt new and full of promise. I watched her from the window as she walked toward the gate. She paused for a moment, took a long, slow breath, and then continued walking. Something in her posture told me she wasn't going to meet just a friend. The house felt painfully quiet after she left. I tried to busy myself, cleaned the living room, folded laundry, even organized some papers. but my mind kept returning to the same question. What is she hiding from me? Hours passed. She didn't return any calls. She didn't reply to my messages. She didn't send a single update. By late afternoon, I sat at the edge of the bed, feeling a heaviness in my chest that I didn't know how to name. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't anger. It was something deeper, something like mourning, but for something that wasn't gone yet, only slipping away. When she finally returned home, the sun was setting. The soft orange light filled the doorway as she stepped in. She looked tired, physically tired, emotionally tired, quietly tired in a way I had never seen before. I stayed still, watching her place her things on the table. She avoided my gaze, her shoulders tense. "Did you have a good time?" I asked gently. She froze for a second, then she nodded. "Yes." It was fine. Her eyes stayed on the floor. I took a slow breath, then another. Then I asked the question that had been slowly burning its way through my mind. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Her body stiffened just slightly, but she didn't turn toward me. After a long moment, she shook her head. "No," she whispered, "nothing." But her voice trembled at the end, just a small tremble, barely noticeable. But I heard it. I felt it. Something inside her was breaking. And she was trying to hold it together. Later that evening, when I walked into the living room, she was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone with a worry line between her brows. She didn't hear me come in at first, but when she noticed me, she quickly put the phone down. And then she said something that made my heart fall in a way I cannot describe. "Can we sleep early tonight?" she asked. She didn't look tired. Her eyes looked restless, not sleepy. But she wanted to hide behind the comfort of ending the day early, ending conversations, ending questions, ending the chance for truth. "Sure," I replied softly, but inside me something quiet shifted into place. I knew without a single doubt that she was carrying a secret she didn't want to face, and I knew that whatever she was hiding, it was connected to the man whose name kept appearing on her phone. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart. She lay beside me, facing the opposite direction, her breathing uneven. Between us, the silence felt colder than it ever had before. Something was coming, something that would change everything. And deep down, I felt the beginning of the truth. A truth I wasn't ready to hear, but could no longer escape. The next morning began quietly, but not peacefully. There was a strange stillness in the air, the kind of stillness that comes before something important finally reveals itself. Elena moved around the house at a slow, careful pace. She made breakfast but barely touched it. She washed her cup, wiped the counter twice, then stood there staring at the sponge in her hand as if she had forgotten what she was doing. I watched her from the dining table, not in suspicion, not in anger, but in a quiet sadness I couldn't hide anymore. She looked fragile that morning, not physically, but emotionally, like she was carrying something she didn't know how to set down. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "You're quiet today," she said softly, not looking up. "I could say the same about you," I replied gently. She paused. Her shoulders lifted with a slow breath, then dropped again, almost as if the weight she carried was too heavy. For a moment, I thought she might say something, anything, but she didn't. She simply dried her hands and walked out of the kitchen. I followed her quietly, stopping near the hallway while she stood by the window, the morning light falling across her face. She looked distant but also conflicted, like someone caught between two worlds. After a few minutes, she whispered without turning around, "Do you think people can change?" The question surprised me. It felt sudden but also deeply meaningful, like it carried a story inside it. "Yes," I said after a moment. "I think people change slowly, sometimes without noticing, sometimes without wanting to." She nodded. Her eyes stayed fixed on the window. "And do you think love can change too?" She asked, her voice even softer this time. My heart tightened at her words. They didn't sound hypothetical, they sounded personal. "Yes," I whispered, "love can change. It can grow or fade or shift into something different." She turned her face slightly, but not enough for me to see her eyes fully. "And what if you don't understand what you're feeling anymore?" she asked. "What if you're scared of yourself?" I took a slow step closer. "Then you talk," I said gently. "You share what's inside you. You don't have to face it alone." She closed her eyes. Her chin trembled for a second, just barely. She looked like someone trying very hard not to break. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered. Those 6 words, quiet, fragile, trembling, felt like the first crack in a wall she had been building for months. "Elena," I said softly, "you're not hurting me by talking. You're hurting me by keeping everything inside." She finally turned toward me, and I saw something in her eyes that I had not seen in a long time: fear. A deep, honest, painful fear. I didn't plan any of this, she said, her voice shaking. I didn't ask for these feelings. I didn't want them. My breath caught. I didn't interrupt her. I didn't react. I just listened, giving her the silence she needed. She looked down at her hands. They just happened, slowly, and I didn't know how to stop them. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. I felt my pulse in my throat. Are you talking about him? I asked quietly. Her lips parted slightly, and for a moment I thought she would deny it. I thought she would tell me I misunderstood. I thought she would give me something, anything to hold on to, but she didn't. Instead, she took a long breath, and her silence confirmed everything I had feared. She didn't look up, she didn't speak, but the truth was right there, sitting between us. I closed my eyes for a moment, not in shock, not in anger, but in quiet acceptance of something I had already felt in my heart long before this morning. When I opened my eyes, she was crying, soft, silent tears that she didn't try to wipe away. I didn't want it to happen, she whispered. I tried to fight it, I tried to push it away, but something inside me kept changing. Her voice broke. I feel guilty every single day. I feel like I'm losing myself. I feel like I'm living two lives and failing at both. I took a slow, steady breath. My chest felt tight but calm. There was no anger in me, only pain and a quiet grief. How long? I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. I don't know. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't planned. It just grew like a shadow. A painful clarity washed over me. The silence, the distance, the changes, the late nights, the half-finished smiles, everything suddenly fit together. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I hate myself for hurting you, she said. I never wanted to break anything between us. I just don't know who I am anymore. I stepped closer, not because I forgave everything in that moment, but because the woman in front of me wasn't cruel. She was confused, lost, and hurting too. Elena, I said softly, I'm not asking you to explain everything today. I just need you to be honest. She nodded, more tears falling. Another long silence filled the room, but this time it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like truth finally finding its way out. I care about him, she whispered, barely audible. I didn't want to, I didn't expect to, but I do. Those words felt like cold water running down my spine. They hurt, they pierced something inside me, but strangely, they also felt like a release. Because the truth was out, finally, no more guessing, no more imagining, no more pretending everything was fine. She began to cry harder, covering her mouth with her hand as if trying to stop the sound. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I never wanted to hurt you. You're a good person. You didn't deserve this. I don't know how I let it happen. I stood still for a long moment, just breathing, just feeling, just accepting. When I finally spoke, my voice came out steadier than I expected. Thank you for telling me, I whispered. She looked up, surprised. I know this hurts, I continued, but hiding it, that would have hurt even more. She nodded slowly, still crying. And in that moment, I realized something quietly heartbreaking. This was the turning point. The moment our marriage shifted from silence to truth. The moment everything we had built stood on unsteady ground. Nothing exploded, nothing shattered violently, but something inside both of us changed forever. I do not remember how long I stood there in the quiet hallway after leaving the living room. It could have been a minute, it could have been 10. Time felt strange, as if it had paused to give me space to breathe or maybe to break. I pressed my hand against the cool wall beside me and tried to steady my heartbeat. I could still hear faint sounds from the living room, voices, footsteps, drawers closing. Life was going on around me, even though something inside me had come to a stop. A few seconds later, I heard light footsteps behind me. It was Anna. She stopped beside me, not too close, not too far, just enough to make me feel she was there without forcing anything. She didn't touch me, she didn't say anything right away, she simply stood quietly. Somehow that silence felt more comforting than any words could have. After a moment, she spoke softly. Do you want to sit down? I shook my head. My voice was barely a whisper when I answered. I'm okay here, but I was okay. I felt hollow and heavy at the same time. I felt like someone had pulled the ground from beneath my feet. Still, I didn't want to move. I didn't want to face the world just yet. The hallway felt like a place between reality and memory, between pain and acceptance. Anna nodded gently and leaned her back against the wall. You don't have to talk, she said. I can just stay here. Her presence was warm, steady, and unassuming. I appreciated that more than she knew. The quiet between us stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like a soft blanket laid over a very fragile moment. Finally, after gathering my strength, I whispered the question that had been sitting in my chest like a stone. Why didn't she tell me she knew all along? Anna took a slow breath before replying. Maybe it hurt too much. Maybe she was waiting for you to be ready, or maybe she didn't know how to start. Her words were kind, but they still stung. The thought that Maya had been carrying this knowledge alone for so long made me feel even worse. I had been thinking only about my own shock, my own guilt, my own pain. But Maya had lived inside this truth for months, maybe years, and she had held it quietly without anger or accusations. I felt tears gather again. She must have suffered so much. Anna turned her head toward me. She loves you. When people love deeply, they sometimes protect others more than themselves. I closed my eyes and a memory surfaced, an ordinary afternoon from last year. I had come home late from work. Maya was sitting at the dining table with her laptop open, papers spread around her. She looked tired. When she saw me, she closed everything quickly and smiled in that warm way she always did. "Long day?" she asked. I nodded, kissed the top of her head, and went to shower. I had no idea then that she was probably struggling with my distance, with the weight of secrets, with the fear of losing what we had. I had been so blind to her hurts. And now, standing in this hallway, it was all coming back to me like waves. Anna broke the silence again. "Do you want to talk to her?" "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I don't want to say something wrong. I don't want to hurt her again." Anna gave a small nod. "But you also can't leave this hanging, not tonight." She was right. The truth was out. It could not be taken back or delayed. It needed to be faced. And even though I felt terrified, I also felt a small, quiet courage growing inside me. Maybe pain had a way of forcing us to face things we had avoided for too long. I finally pushed myself away from the wall. "Where is she?" "In your room," Anna said. She needed a moment too. I thanked her quietly and walked toward the bedroom. With each step, I could feel memories brushing past me: laughter, gentle mornings, shared silence, small arguments, apologies, dreams. I wondered how many of those memories Maya had experienced while also carrying the truth she had just revealed. I wondered how many times she had looked at me and felt both love and sadness. When I reached the door, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the handle. For a moment, I considered turning away, postponing this painful conversation, pretending I wasn't ready. But that would be running again, and running was what had created this gap between us in the first place. So I took a deep breath and opened the door slowly. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. Maya was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped together, her shoulders slightly hunched. She looked small, almost fragile, but there was also a certain strength in the way she held herself, like someone who had survived many heavy nights. When she looked up at me, her eyes were teary but calm, as if she had already accepted whatever was going to happen next. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The quiet felt uncomfortable at first, but then I realized it wasn't silence between strangers. It was silence between two people who had lived a long journey together. I sat beside her, leaving a small space between us. I didn't reach for her hand. I didn't speak yet. I simply breathed, letting the moment settle. It was Maya who broke the silence. "I didn't want to tell you that day," she said softly. But when Anna read it out loud, I couldn't hide anymore. My throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me when you found out?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I was afraid. I was afraid you would leave. I was afraid the truth would destroy everything we had, and I was afraid that you didn't love me the same way I loved you." Those words pierced through me. "I did love you," I said quietly. "I still do." Maya swallowed hard. "Then why did you pull away? Why did you keep secrets? Why did you let me believe everything was okay when you knew it was?" Her voice didn't rise. There was no anger, only deep hurt. I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "Because I didn't know how to deal with my mistakes. I thought distancing myself would protect you, but it only pushed you away." A single tear slid down her cheek. "Do you know how many nights I waited for you to come talk to me?" she whispered. "How many times I tried to reach you, but you didn't see me?" My chest tightened. I wanted to say sorry again, but apologies felt too small for the pain she had carried. For a long moment, we just sat there, letting the truth settle between us like a heavy blanket. Then Maya inhaled slowly and looked at me with soft, tired eyes. "I don't want to keep living inside something broken," she said. "If we are going to move forward, it has to be with honesty, not fear." Her words were gentle, but they shook me deeply. This was the turning point, not the revelation itself, but this quiet, vulnerable moment where we both faced the truth together. I nodded slowly. "I don't want fear anymore either. I want to rebuild if you want that too." Maya didn't answer right away. She looked down, then at me, then at the floor. After a long pause, she whispered, I want to try, but I need time. I'll wait, I said softly, as long as you need. In that moment, nothing was fixed, nothing was certain, but for the first time in a long time, we were honest. We were present. We were facing the same direction, even if the path ahead was still unclear. The truth had broken something open, but maybe, just maybe, it had also created space for something new. I woke up the next morning with a strange heaviness in my chest. It was not sharp pain, not the kind that makes you gasp or panic. It was the quiet kind. The kind that feels like a deep ache right under your ribs, like your heart is trying to breathe but cannot quite expand fully. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling. The room felt colder than usual. The silence felt heavier. And Elena's side of the bed felt empty in a way that was hard to ignore. She had slept next to me, yes, but it felt like she was miles away. I turned my head and looked at the soft shape she had left on the blanket. Her presence was there, but somehow her heart was. It's a strange thing, realizing that someone you love is slipping away even while lying right beside you. I finally sat up, rubbed my eyes, and took a slow breath. My head was full of questions I did not know how to ask. Was she unhappy? Did she feel trapped? Had I missed something important? Was she trying to leave me gently without causing pain? Or was she simply lost, the way people get lost sometimes? I didn't know, and the fear of knowing kept me frozen. When I walked into the kitchen, I found her making tea. She looked tired again. Her movements were slow, like each gesture carried weight. Good morning, I said softly. She paused for half a second before replying, morning. Her voice was quiet, not cold. Just distant, I wanted to reach out and hold her. I wanted to wrap my arms around her and remind her that she was not alone. But something inside me whispered, wait, give her space, do not push her. So I stood a few feet away, holding my worry like something fragile. She placed a cup of tea on the table, one for herself, one for me. It was a simple gesture, but it carried a strange heaviness, like she was still trying to follow a routine her heart was no longer inside. We sat in silence, not the peaceful silence couples share, but the kind that feels like a wall no one knows how to climb. I took a slow sip and let the warmth fill my chest. She kept looking at her hands. Her fingers kept moving like she was trying to find something to hold on to. Finally, after a long, slow moment, she whispered, we should talk. My heart dropped, not because I knew what she would say, but because I didn't. I nodded gently. Okay. She didn't look at me. She stared at the steam rising from her cup as if the answer was hidden there. I don't know how to start, she said. You can start anywhere, I replied. She took a shaky breath. I'm not myself lately, she said quietly. I know that, and I know you feel it. I stayed silent, not out of fear, but out of respect. She needed space to speak. I'm not pulling away on purpose, she whispered. It's not something you did. It's not anger. It's not disappointment. She paused, searching for the right words. It's an emptiness, she finally said. A feeling I don't understand, like something inside me is missing, like I'm trying to breathe through a window instead of fresh air. Her voice trembled, not dramatic, not loud, just honest. It was the kind of tremble that comes when someone is tired of pretending to be strong. I don't want to hurt you, she continued. I've been trying to act normal because I didn't want you to feel scared or confused, but I'm lost, and I don't know how to fix it. My heart tightened. I had thought she was pulling away from me, but now I could see she wasn't pulling away from me. She was drifting away from herself. This realization softened something inside me. It replaced my fear with a quiet sadness. I reached out slowly and placed my hand near hers on the table, not touching her, just close enough that she could choose. She looked at my hand for a moment, then she slowly placed her hand on top of mine. Her fingers were cold. I'm here, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I don't want to lose you, she whispered back, but I'm scared that if I don't understand what's happening inside me, I might hurt you without meaning to. I nodded softly. Then we'll understand it together. Whatever it is, we'll face it. She closed her eyes briefly, as if my words reached a place inside her she had kept locked. I don't deserve that patience, she said quietly. You do, I replied. Everyone does when they're trying. A small breath left her chest, not a sigh of relief, but something in between, a breath of someone who feels seen after a long time. We sat like that for a while, two people who loved each other, two people who were hurting, two people who didn't know the answers but were still willing to try. When she finally spoke again, her voice was softer. I don't know what the next steps are, she said. We don't need steps, I told her. We just need honesty. One day at a time. She nodded slowly, and for the first time in weeks, she looked directly at me, really looked, not through me, not past me, at me. There was still uncertainty in her eyes, still sadness, still confusion, but there was also a small flicker of something else, something fragile, something hopeful. And that small spark was enough for me, because sometimes healing begins not with answers, but with honesty, with gentle words, with quiet courage. With two people choosing to face discomfort instead of hiding from it. And in that moment, sitting at our small kitchen table with warm tea between us and questions still hanging in the air, I felt the first shift. Not a solution, not a fix, just a beginning, a soft beginning, a hopeful beginning, a place where we could finally breathe again. The days that followed were quiet, but different from the quiet we had before. This silence felt softer, less heavy, more honest. It was the kind of silence that comes after two people admit something real, not painful truth, not dramatic confessions, but the simple acknowledgement that both hearts are tired and both hearts want to heal. Elena became more open after that morning, not suddenly, not completely, but her walls lowered slowly like curtains being pulled aside to let a small amount of sunlight in. I noticed the change in small ways. She lingered a bit longer when I spoke. She smiled more, even if only half. She didn't pretend as much, and sometimes, late at night, she would rest her head on my shoulder, not because everything was fine, but because she was trying. Trying matters. Trying is a kind of love. One evening, while we were sitting on the couch, she leaned into me and whispered, "Do you ever feel like you lost a part of yourself without realizing when it happened?" The question was gentle but heavy. I nodded. "Yes," I said quietly. "It happens when life moves too fast. When you forget to take care of the parts of your heart that need rest." She wrapped her arms around her knees. "I feel like I lost myself somewhere along the way," she said, "and I've been scared to say it out loud. I didn't say, 'But I'm here.' I didn't say, 'It's okay.' I just listened. Sometimes listening is the most loving thing you can do. I used to know what made me happy," she continued. "I used to know my dreams. I used to wake up with energy. Now I wake up tired. And I don't even know why." Her voice wasn't shaking this time. It was calm, almost peaceful, like admitting the feeling removed a small weight from her chest. "You're not alone," I whispered. "People lose themselves sometimes. Life can be overwhelming. Responsibilities can bury your voice, but you can always find your way back." She looked at me then, really looked, with eyes that were soft but searching. "How?" she asked. "How do you find yourself again?" I took a slow breath. "You start with one small thing," I said. "One tiny step, one gentle truth, one simple choice to take care of your heart, and then you take another step, and another. You don't rush, you don't force, you just walk." She rested her head on my chest, her breathing slowed, her body softened. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know," I said, "and it's okay to be scared." She didn't speak again for a long time. We sat there together in a quiet that felt warm instead of cold. A quiet that wrapped itself around us like a blanket. Later that night, she came to bed earlier than usual. She lay beside me, closer than before. She placed her hand on my arm and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." "I never wanted to," I told her. "I just didn't know how to reach you." "You reached me today," she said softly. Those words stayed with me long after she fell asleep. Over the next few days, we began talking more. Small conversations at first, nothing deep, nothing heavy. "How was your day? What did you eat for lunch? Do you want to watch something together?" But these simple conversations built gentle bridges between us. They helped us reconnect in ways that arguments never could. One afternoon, while I was watering the plants, she came outside and stood beside me. "I want to try something new," she said. I turned to her. "Like what?" She shrugged, but there was a small spark in her eyes, a spark I hadn't seen in months. "I don't know yet," she said, "but maybe a class or a hobby, something small, something just for me." I smiled. "That sounds wonderful." "I want to find myself again," she whispered. "Not for you, not because something is wrong, but because I want to feel alive again." I nodded, feeling a soft warmth in my chest. "I'll support you in anything," I said. "You don't need my permission, you just need your own courage." She smiled gently, a genuine smile, one that reached her eyes. "Thank you." And for the first time, I saw hope growing inside her. Not in a dramatic way, not like a sudden sunrise, more like the quiet way a flower begins to bloom after a long winter. A week later, she joined a small weekend art class. It was nothing major, just a simple group where people painted together for 2 hours. But when she came home after the first session, she looked lighter. "I forgot how good it feels to do something with my hands," she said excitedly. I forgot how much I liked colors, brushes, patterns. It felt free. Her face glowed with a softness I had missed deeply. That makes me happy, I said. Me too, she whispered. We began spending more time together, walking in the evenings, cooking together on weekends, sitting on the balcony without saying much, just enjoying the presence of each other. Some days were still quiet. Some days she felt confused. Some days she shut down again, but only briefly. Healing never moves in a straight line. It moves like waves, forward, backward, then forward again. But gradually she started finding pieces of herself again, and I started finding pieces of us, not the old us, not the past, but a softer version, a gentler version, a version built on honesty, not fear. One night while we lay together, she whispered, "I don't feel lost anymore, not completely. I feel like I'm walking back to myself." Slowly, "I'm glad," I whispered. "I'm walking with you." She held my hand tightly. And for the first time in a long time, I felt her heart next to mine, not confused, not distant, just present, quietly present, and that was enough. As the weeks continued, our home slowly began to feel different, not because anything dramatic had changed, not because problems suddenly disappeared, but because there was a quiet understanding growing between us, a gentle awareness that both of us were trying. And trying, I learned, is a kind of love that doesn't always look beautiful, but it is beautiful in its honesty. One Saturday morning, I woke early and found Elena sitting by the window. The sunlight touched her hair, and she looked peaceful, not fully healed, not perfectly okay, but present in a way she hadn't been for a long time. She didn't notice me at first. She was sketching something, small strokes of pencil moving slowly across a page. There was no hesitation in her hands, no heaviness in her posture. For a moment, I just watched her. It felt like watching someone slowly return home. After a while, she looked up and gave me a soft smile. "Good morning," she whispered. I sat beside her. "What are you drawing?" She turned the sketchbook toward me. It was a simple drawing, two hands reaching toward each other, not touching yet, but close. "It's how I feel," she said simply. "Like I'm reaching out, but I'm still finding my way." Her honesty warmed my chest. "It's beautiful," I said, "and true." She looked down again, gently shading one corner of the drawing. "I used to feel ashamed of the way I felt," she admitted. "I didn't want you to think I was unhappy with you, because I was. I was unhappy with myself. I just didn't know how to explain it." "You don't owe me perfection," I said softly. "You just owe me honesty, and we have that now." She let out a slow, relieved breath. Sometimes healing is not a moment, it is a collection of small breaths. Later that week, we took a long walk through a quiet park near our home. The weather was gentle, the breeze soft against our faces. Elena walked beside me, her steps unhurried, her body relaxed. For a long time, we didn't speak. We just walked, letting the calmness settle around us. Eventually, she said, "I think I needed to be honest with myself before I could be honest with you." I nodded. "That makes sense." She kicked a small pebble on the path and continued. "I had forgotten what I wanted. I had forgotten who I was before responsibilities, before expectations, before the routine, and I kept thinking something was wrong with me, that I should be stronger, happier, more stable. You don't need to be strong all the time," I told her. "It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to pause. It's okay to ask for help." She looked at me with gentle eyes. "I didn't want to be a burden," she whispered. "You're not a burden," I said. "Not then, not now, not ever." She stopped walking and turned to face me completely. Her eyes glistened with the smallest amount of emotion. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for walking beside me even when I was walking away from myself. There are some words that feel like soft rain, they fall lightly, but they wash so much away." I took her hand and she didn't pull away. We simply stood there under the trees, holding on to each other's presence, not holding tightly. Just gently, one night, about 3 weeks into her healing journey, she sat beside me on the couch and leaned her head on my shoulder. "I want to tell you something," she whispered. I placed my hand gently on her back. "I'm listening." She paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I'm not fully okay yet," she said. "I still have days where I feel empty. I still have moments where I don't understand myself, but I'm not scared anymore." "Why not?" I asked softly. "Because now I know I'm not alone in it," she said, "and that gives me strength." I felt my throat tighten with quiet emotion. She continued, "I've been thinking a lot about our relationship, about how I drifted away, about how you could have gotten angry or pushed me or blamed me, but you didn't. You stayed calm, you stayed patient, you stayed kind, and it made me realize something." "What?" I asked. "That love doesn't disappear when one person feels lost," she said. "It just waits, softly, quietly." until the heart finds its way back. Her words touched something deep inside me. We sat together in stillness, her head resting on my shoulder, my arm around her, the room filled with a warmth that came not from perfection but from understanding. Healing is not loud, healing is not fast, healing is not magical. Healing is slow mornings and quiet conversations. It is tears that come without warning. It is shaky voices speaking uncomfortable truths. Is gentle hands reaching out instead of giving up. It is two people choosing to stay even when things feel uncertain. A few days later, I noticed something new in her lightness, not constant, not bright, but gentle like a small lamp turned on in a dim room. She started cooking again when she felt like it. She hummed softly while watering the plants. She left sticky notes on the fridge with tiny sketches and short messages like, "Thank you, I'm trying, you make things easier." Small steps. And every time I found one, I felt a quiet joy inside me. One evening, while we sat on the balcony watching the sky change colors, she whispered, "I feel myself coming back." I smiled softly, "And I'm grateful I get to witness it." She leaned into me and exhaled slowly, a peaceful breath, a healing breath. "I don't know what the future looks like," she said, "but I feel hopeful again, and that's something I haven't felt in a long time." I took her hand gently. "We'll build the future," I said, slowly, kindly together. She nodded. And in that moment, in the softness of the evening light, in the calmness of her voice, in the warmth of her hand, I felt something settle inside both of us. Not a return to the past, but a quiet step toward a new beginning, a gentler one, a truer one. A beginning built not on fear or perfection, but on understanding, patience, and love that chooses to stay even in the silent moments. Life did not suddenly become perfect after everything we went through. There were still quiet days. There were still moments where Elena felt uncertain, moments where I felt afraid of losing her again, moments where both of us wondered whether we were truly healing or just learning to hide the pain better. But slowly, almost silently, something warm began to settle between us. Not the old comfort, not the old rhythm, something softer, something wiser, a new beginning. One morning, a few months after our hardest days, I woke up and found Elena already dressed. She was standing by the window, looking outside with a peaceful expression. When she turned around, her smile was small but real. "Come with me," she said. "Where?" I asked. "You'll see." We got into the car and drove without saying much. The sun was rising slowly, painting soft colors across the sky. We reached a quiet hill just outside the city, a place we hadn't visited since the early years of our marriage. "We used to come here," I said, remembering. She nodded. "I know, I wanted to come again." We walked to the top of the hill. The wind was gentle, the air felt fresh, and for a moment it felt like time slowed down for both of us. She sat on a rock and looked at the horizon. "I used to feel trapped," she said quietly. "Not because of you, not because of our marriage. Just trapped in my own thoughts, my own fears." I sat beside her and listened. "I kept thinking I had to be perfect," she continued. "I thought I had to be strong all the time, and when I wasn't, I felt like I was failing you." My heart tightened a little. "I never wanted you to feel that way." "I know," she said softly. "That's why I'm telling you now, because I'm learning, slowly, and I want you to know who I am becoming." I waited, letting her speak in her own time. "I'm not the same person I was before," she said. "I'm not as sure of myself, I'm not as strong, but I'm more honest now, more aware, more willing to ask for help." She looked at me, and there was no distance in her eyes anymore, no shadows, just sincerity. "I'm still healing," she whispered, "but I'm not scared to say it anymore." I reached for her hand, and she intertwined her fingers with mine. "I'm healing too," I admitted. "You're not the only one who walked through that darkness. I was in it with you, maybe not in the same way, maybe not with the same fears, but I felt the distance, I felt the silence, and I felt helpless." She squeezed my hand gently. "I know," she said quietly, "and I'm grateful you stayed." We sat like that for a long time, two people who had seen the fragile parts of each other and still chose to hold hands anyway. Sometimes love is loud and passionate. But sometimes love is a quiet sunrise on a lonely hill where two people simply sit together after surviving something heavy. On the way back home, she rested her head on my shoulder while I drove. It was such a small gesture, but it felt like the final piece returning. Not the old version of her, not the old version of us. A new version, a gentler one. When we reached home, she turned to me before getting out of the car. "Can I tell you something?" she asked softly. "Of course." "I'm proud of us," she whispered, "for not giving up, for not letting silence win, for choosing to understand instead of blame." I felt my chest warm with emotion. I'm proud of us too, I said. She leaned forward and touched her forehead to mine. I want our life to be slow, she said, not rushed, not pressured. I want us to talk, to listen, to breathe, to grow. I want us to be gentle with each other. We can do that, I whispered. We already are. She smiled, a real smile, full of something peaceful and steady. In the months that followed, nothing dramatic happened. We didn't make grand promises. We didn't rebuild everything in a day. We didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. Instead, we did small things. We took evening walks. We cooked together. We learned to say, I'm tired and I need space without fear. We talked, even when it felt uncomfortable. We held each other on heavy days. We laughed on lighter ones. Healing became part of our routine, quiet, steady, and real, and slowly the love between us grew roots again. Not thin, fragile roots like before, but deep ones, strong enough to survive the storms we had walked through. One night, while we were sitting in the living room with warm tea, Elena said something that stayed with me. You know, she whispered, I used to think relationships break when someone stops loving, but now I think relationships break when someone stops understanding. I nodded. And they heal, I replied, when both people choose to understand again. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her gently. We stayed like that quietly, feeling the warmth of a peace we had earned not through perfection, but through patience. As time passed, I realized that pain had changed us, but not in a harmful way. It made us softer, more aware, more appreciative, more willing to slow down, more willing to notice small things, more willing to listen. And in that softness, in that slow rebuilding, we found something deeper than what we had before. Not a fairy tale ending, not a perfect life, just a quiet, steady love built on honesty and courage and two people choosing each other again and again. Today, when I look at Elena, at her gentle smile, at her peaceful eyes, at the way she sits beside me without fear, I feel grateful. Not for the pain we went through, but for the strength we found in each other, for the patience that kept us together, for the understanding that healed what silence had broken. And maybe that is the lesson I carry with me now. Love is not about never feeling lost. Love is not about being strong all the time. Love is not about hiding your struggles. Love is choosing to stay even when the road becomes unclear. Love is reaching out even when your heart feels tired. Love is walking slowly until both people find their way back. And when they do, when two hearts return to each other after drifting apart, the love that grows afterward is gentler, softer, and far more real. That is our ending, not perfect, not dramatic, just honest, just human, just us walking forward together, one quiet step at a time. Thanks for listening. If you like this story, please subscribe my channel for support me. See you in the next video.